Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are taking a trip today to one of the most fabulous gardens in California. The garden is Filoli, and this is part one. It's too long to do two gardens in one, so we will start with Northern California and Filoli. This is one of the most colorful gardens in America and in California. One of the benefits of a garden in California is that you end up with year-round color. Even in the winter, you have the camellias and the rhododendrons, and many flowers can grow year-round in California. So it is a wonderful place to go, and you can visit it year-round. One of the questions you'll ask is, well, as you look at the mansion here, and this is an estate garden, the people no longer live here, but it is in Woodside, California, near Silicon Valley, just to the side of San Jose, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in America. This mansion, if you are old enough, you would recognize this as the mansion in Dynasty TV series, not the one on Netflix. This was 30 years ago. Beautiful house. And when you start to buy your acreage, it's on 654 acres, which is a little more than 1 square mile. When you buy your acreage, one of the first things you have to do is site the house to take advantage of the sun, to take advantage of the views, and to take advantage of the vegetation, both natural and planned. Here's an oak tree where they had to move the house so that they could make sure they didn't cut this oak tree, which was 100 years old at the time. At the time they built the house. This garden is a mixture of English and Italian. And as you remember, the Italian gardens were called green gardens because they had virtually no color. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, at the height of the British Empire, many British buyers came and bought up properties in Lake Como and in Tuscany, and they imported their English gardens. They used the basic structure of the Italian garden and imported into all the parterres and borders. They imported a lot of color. Here you see what is an allée, they call it. This is a an allée of bollarded plane trees, which is similar to the California sycamore. And what they do with these trees is they make sure that there are no low branches, and they cut off all the branches up top, make sure it forms a ball. Very English. Now, one of the reasons you want to go and visit a major garden is to get ideas for your own. And here's like a little idea you can, any size house on any size lot can use. Just flowers on either side of the entry. This is just the back door to the mansion, and it gives a lot of color. Here you have a great lawn in California. You've got to consider what your rainfall is, what your sunshine is, and what your temperatures are. Here you have in Woodside, you have 37 inches of annual rain. When you take a look at Southern California, the Huntington Gardens, you will find out that you get about 14 inches of rain. Therefore, you can have these big lawns, and you don't need to import a lot of water in a sprinkler system, which can be very, very costly, and particularly in Southern California. So the question is, when you're looking at this, there are 16 and a half acres of formal gardens plus orchards. And when you've got to wonder how many full-time staff members they have for the gardens. And so you think about that, we'll give you the answer a little bit later. Here you have what's called a border, which was popularized by Gertrude Jekyll and Edwin Lutyens, an architect in England around the turn of the 19th century and turn of the 20th century, late 19th century. And what they did was they had the small flowers in front, medium size in the middle, and large flowering bushes or flowers like hollyhocks in the back. And so that you had various gradations of color, and none of them blocked out the color of the other plants. Here you have what they partitioned areas into different areas. So here you see the boxwood hedges with rose trees. They train the rose trees up so that the flowers are up above at head height. And you can go to one parterre, one box section, and put in red roses. Go to another section, put in yellow roses, orange roses, etc. Here is just a walkway with some topiary mounds and some color. Here you have hydrangeas. These are the largest hydrangeas I have ever seen. You can see how large they are by comparing the size of the blossom to my hand. Absolutely enormous. What they do is they have sections. Here again, you have flowers, which with different colorings, lavender and blue, mixed in with orange. And they used a lot of these for cutting flowers in the house. They would have somebody who takes care of cutting flowers every day and putting them in the vases so that you have cut flowers in the house. One of the ideas here was to use hedges, as you see on the right, and brick walls, stone walls to form rooms, so that you have different sections that are actually feel like different outdoor rooms. When you have the brick or other masonry walls, it keeps out the pests like the rabbits, which really love to eat your flowers, and the deer, which love to eat your roses. Here you can see this is just a walkway with flowers inside borders. And if you take a little area such as this right here and put that cut a small section, you can use that as a design for your own house. You don't need 50 acres in order to you don't need gardens this immense, but you can get ideas to beautify your own garden. Here, of course, you've got immense acreage. Here you have some heather, which gives you texture and color. Uh, and let me tell you a little bit about the mansion itself. It was finished in 1917 for William Bourne, who owned the Empire Gold Mine. In 1937, after he had passed away, they sold it to the Mr. and Mrs. William Roth, who owned the Matson Navigation Company. In 1974, it was for sale for $4.5 million, and they took it off the market. Lurleen Matson Roth took it off the market and and donated 125 acres with a house to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. In 1982, she donated the remainder of the 654 acres. Therefore, it is available here for all to see and all to enjoy. Um, Here you have cutting. This is cutting flowers for the house and simply to grow pretty flowers. Here you have dahlias. You notice that you can walk just on the dirt. This is not for viewing the gardens. This is for actually doing the gardening. This is not an area where you come to walk. Here you see some rudbeckias, and these are also cutting flowers. Now, this is not just a pleasure garden. This also has orchards, has fruit orchards. It has an olive tree orchard. It has vegetables and herb gardens surrounded by lavender. Here you see some more vegetable and herbs and lavenders in one of the rooms or sections of the garden. Um, Now we take a look at the hardscape. The hardscape is ponds, fountains, pools, pool houses, and garden buildings. That is separate from the plants, and they tend to give dimension and uh, and separate the garden into separate rooms, as it were. Here you see a big gate leading from the house and to the gardens. Here you see a brick wall with a solid teak door. The solid door keeps out the bunnies, which love to eat your flowers and your vegetables. Here you can see another gate through the wall. You can take a look at some of the great wrought iron they have. Here you have some of your boxwood hedges with flowers filling in between, and you can see the big hedges with the entry and exit hedges. No gates, but it forms an outdoor room. Here you see another outdoor gate for another section of the garden. Some of the things, this is a very small pond, a small fountain that could fit in any size house, but it adds an immense variation. Here's another fountain with some flowers around, surrounded by a hedge. You could also have some seats around the hedges. Here you have a sundial, although why anybody would want to be measuring time in a garden of this beauty is beyond me, but it's something to talk about in the garden. Here you see the pool down at the end of a long lawn with walkway to and the pool. What you have here is a pool house. This has changing rooms and it has restrooms for both male and female for the guests. And you have a garden room. This is just an entertaining room out in the in the garden. Now it is used for souvenirs and buying your tickets and things like that. Here's a tea house, and this was used just you could have the servants come out and serve you tea while you chat with your friends. And here's the interior of the tea house. Now, we asked before how many people are on the garden staff. They have a total of 14. Some of them are interns, so they get some free work from the interns, but what a beautiful place to work. We will, in a separate video, talk about the mansion and go through the mansion itself. As you are aware, Ragnar does architecture and garden travels. So we look at the architecture and the gardens as we travel. This is easy to get to. You can fly into the San Francisco or San Jose airports, and it's an easy ride. We'll do a mansion at later times. At the bottom of this film, we will show you in the description area the website to get to, which will show you the cost of entry and the schedule of entries. We will also showing you a list of films that have been filmed at this venue. And in a later video, we will talk to you about using this site, the mansion and the gardens, as a wedding venue. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. The last thing we're going to show you is the use of steps and the use of different types of walkways. Here you see this slope is obviously shallow enough that you didn't need these brick steps, and they're only one step high. But the design is quite attractive, and it gives you it separates the garden into four separate areas. And you could use this effect in a small garden, which would make the garden appear much, much larger. Here you have the brick walkway and a basket weave with a border alongside. This is obviously the most expensive way to build the walkways. Here you see gravel walkways, not quite as formal. And these you would put a fabric underneath which stops the weeds. But there's still, if there's enough rain and some seeds come in, you could get some small seeds and weeds growing in this. So you do need to maintain this. The third and final walkway they use is decomposed granite. This is simply taking hard granite, packing it, little say, grains of granite. As long as it's not raining, it forms a very hard surface. You wouldn't sink in at all. It does get a little messy if it's wet. Thank you again. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the tour of the mansion and the tour of Huntington Gardens in Southern California, which has many different aspects. Thank you, and that is goodbye.